All right, what's going on here, boys and girls? We are here with another Linux reaction video. I haven't done one of these in a while. So this could be very PC or this could be very swear laden. I don't know quite yet. So needless to say, this is a video called the top 5 missing features in Linux versus Microsoft Windows and Apple macOS. Hashtag Geekoutdoors.com. These videos are always hit or miss with me, so I'm curious to see what he's actually got to say. So this is kind of a first reaction video plus a rebuttal kind of video. So let's get into what he has to say, really.
Being a Linux user for so long, I really feel like there's very few things that are lacking within Linux. However, having used all 3 operating systems from Windows to Mac to Linux, there's definitely things that are missing. So today I'm going to be talking about my top 5 missing features in Linux. Now the features that I'm going to be focusing on are things that are built in and that are native to the operating systems. Now depending on how you use your computer, these could be a good or a bad thing. So let's go ahead and start with number 5, and that is less freedom. And so you're probably wondering how having less freedom is a missing feature. Well, just think about the average user of Microsoft Windows or Apple macOS. Most average users are not uber geeks and nerds who would actually tinker with the operating system. And so a lot of people who use their computer are pretty much people who really like convenience. And so whenever you're using Microsoft Windows and especially Apple's macOS, those operating systems take care of a lot of the technical things underneath to where people don't have to think about it. Okay, things such as system updates and also security updates as well. But there are so many other things that these other operating systems offer in terms of convenience for the average user. Now, I really feel Linux is much easier to use, but once again, the majority of people who use their computers are not going to be like Linux users. So less freedom is bad for Linux users, but less freedom for people who use Windows and Apple's macOS is probably actually a good thing. Okay.
That entire point makes no goddamn sense. Convenience versus freedom is essentially what you're saying. Now, a lot of us who use Linux, and do note, this is being done ironically on Ubuntu 16.04 with Unity on a Surface Pro 2. So I completely get the irony of this. Less freedom is better. That's debatable, convenience versus, freedom. There's a point to be made there. It's kind of like the philosophical versus practicality take on things. But the simple fact of the matter is that's one of your main points is Linux does a lot of things that Windows doesn't, or macOS. How hard is it? Like, I'm just going to use 16.04 as the example because 18.04 hasn't been released yet. At this time, it is literally, you start your computer, it checks what, daily, I believe by default in Ubuntu. It checks for updates. It brings up a little thing that says update, and you click install updates. Input your password, and you roll on. That's it. So it rolls with updates. This point makes no sense. This is using Ubuntu. So this point makes no sense. Now, if you're running Arch or something, and you can get into the aesthetics of like the front ends of the software centers and that stuff, but this point is just nonsensical to me.
So let's go ahead and get to number 4, and that is the voice assistant. Now, could be very controversial.
Fucking Cortana. Don't get me wrong, Mycroft is terrible, but fucking Cortana is not a goddamn selling point. And I hate to break it to you, Siri is just as fucking bad, and you're using this as a selling point. Do you legitimately know how many people actually talk to their fucking phone, let alone their PC or whatever version of view you think of personal computing? I could give two shits. I have an Android phone. I never use the voice search. I never use the Google Assistant. Siri is about as dumb as a sack of bricks. And Cortana is probably about as slow and about as dumb as the friggin' tar pits in California. Like, it is dense as crap.
As I think for a lot of Linux users, we don't like the fact that there could be something listening in to everything that we're doing on our computer. But if you actually simply look at where the entire industry, no matter what field you're in, is heading, it's all heading towards natural language technology.
No, it's not heading towards fucking natural language technology. Yes, they are looking to make natural like technology enablement to make it so that communication is easier. Things like the automatic translation with Skype and etc. That stuff's cool. I like that stuff. I like things that break down barriers in communication like that. That I like. The natural evolution of where we're heading, though, is not just fucking voice assistants. It's AI, it's robotics, it's all that bullshit is where we're heading. And I think you're missing that point.
If you look at your mobile devices, you can look at your home assistants, any of these smart devices, and obviously on your operating system itself, it's becoming more and more common for people to use some type of voice assisted technology. And as natural language gets more and more advanced and the artificial intelligence that goes with it, more and more people are going to rely on voice technology versus actually having to type anything in. And so that is another thing that these two operating systems, like with Microsoft Windows, they offer Cortana, Apple macOS is Siri, and then if you're using something like a Chromebook, you're going to be using Google Now services. Now, I myself, I'm really glad that we don't have that natively built into Linux right now, but I could easily see that in the future, this might be something that is going to be built into all the major distros because of where we're heading. Okay, and so what is the number 3 missing feature in Linux? That is built-in support. Now, if you have been a Linux user for a long time, you are probably used to
I'm going to be nice and
learning
listen.
how to figure out problems and figuring out solutions to these problems whenever you're using your operating system. But once again, the average user does like convenience, and when it comes to having technical issues on their computer, it's a lot easier for most people to just have some type of built-in help available. Now, within both Microsoft and Apple's macOS, they already have built-in help tools, most of which is automated, which is virtual assistants, but they could also get somebody to actually log into their machine, especially in Microsoft where they do allow backdoor access to where people can actually take over their machines and troubleshoot their problems. Now, once again, for Linux user, this is probably something that they don't really need, but an average user who isn't really technical or who don't want to spend a lot of time, this is definitely a benefit for them.
Technical support. Remote desktop much? There are ways that the Linux community and distributions could implement things like help IRC channels better into the system than they do. I will agree with that. There's better ways for them to implement documentation into the system than they do. I will agree with that. I believe that you can find the support you're looking for if you're put on the right fucking distribution. Just gonna say.
So let's go ahead and move on to the number 2 missing feature, and that is consistency. Now, even though Linux has gotten so much better, especially with the major distros, I really feel that it's definitely not at the level of a Microsoft Windows or especially an Apple macOS, where there is consistency across the board in terms of how things look, how things function, and just the whole look and feel of everything, okay? The whole user experience. It's one consistent experience. And so that is really important because a lot of people do like consistency. And if you do look at modern Linux, it's a lot more consistent than it used to be. But once again, Linux has so many different versions or distributions. And so there is definitely a lack of consistency, especially when you think about the way that programs look as well. Whereas in the whole Microsoft and Apple world, that is simply not the case.
Consistency. That would be the pro and con of different toolkits available to write programs in, different libraries, etc. That's almost a valid point. Until you look at the fucking start menu you have up right here, which looks like a bunch of fucking rainbow colored vomit in my menu. That's consistent? Fuck you. And as far as macOS consistency, it can't make up its mind if macOS wants to be iOS or an actual fucking desktop operating system. Because I don't think Apple has its head... Apple's got its head so far up its mobile's ass that it doesn't know what its desktop is anymore. Now, you can talk about icon consistency and that kind of stuff, and how certain icons in the actual menus and stuff don't scale well. There are certain problems with, certain user interfaces. Try Elementary OS, try Pantheon, try any number of actual different desktops that their whole fucking goal is a consistent UI. Look at for all its problems that KDE still does have, or Plasma, I should specifically state that it does have. You will get a better look and feel consistently across the board for the most part. It has its issues, don't get me wrong. Across the board, whether it's a GTK app, whether it's a Qt app or a Qt app, across the board in that look and feel than you ever will, to me, in fucking Windows. And Mac OS is a one-size-fits-all, don't touch anything approach, which is fucking stupid. And Windows, again, rainbow-colored vomit on the start menu. It went from full-screen rainbow-colored vomit in Windows 8 to rainbow-colored vomit with ads in the start menu and in the file browser. Awesome. Yeah, that's a great feature.
Look and feel and operate very similarly because of the consistency rules that they have in place. So what is the number one missing feature in Linux?
Programs.
That is the ecosystem. The whole entire ecosystem that both Microsoft and Apple provide is the main reason why people would choose those operating systems over something like Linux. Because whenever you have this entire ecosystem, whether it would be for business, whether it would be for entertainment, whether it would be for productivity, those things cannot be understated. That's why a lot of people who are on these ecosystems, especially Apple users, it's really hard for them to move anywhere else because so much of what they do is dependent upon this ecosystem. Now, Linux, it does have its own ecosystem, but it really depends on the distro that they're using and the community support.
I'm trying to be very polite at the moment.
That's behind it. Whereas companies like Microsoft and Apple, that is how they make their money. That is how they stay in business. It's all because of the ecosystem that they provide. And, that is something that in the future, it might be more commonplace in Linux as well. But right now, that is the number one missing feature within Linux, having this cohesive, really large ecosystem that really offers everything that a lot of people would like, and that they actually use on a daily basis. And so if you had any thoughts on the top 5 missing features.
You hurt my fucking brain. I watch these videos and I try to give these a fair shake. The fucking ecosystem. 9 times out of 10, the generic end user will find the one techie friend that they know. And let's be honest, most Linux users are techie people. So the simple fact of the matter is, you're going to put them on generically open source applications. Firefox, Chromium if you want Chrome, cross-platform applications. So if you put them on those to begin with, all the people care about are the applications. So if they have their applications, guess what? They don't give a two-bit flying shit about the underlying OS. Generically, I'm speaking about generic, keyboard, chair, kind of people. They don't care about the underlying OS. They just want their programs and to be able to get their shit done. That's all they care about. So you, as the techie, and usually probably the tech support for them, should be putting them on those cross-platform applications. So when you do potentially or can potentially switch out the system to, say, a Linux as opposed to macOS or Windows or whatever flavor you want to run, that way the underlying OS doesn't really fucking matter because all their applications are still fucking there. And you as the techie know the benefits of actually being, actual benefits of running Linux as opposed to macOS or Windows. And that person's happy and content because they have all their fucking applications. So it's not about ecosystem. It's about people understanding and having access to their fucking applications. And you as the techie should be giving them cross-platform applications so that the fucking underlying OS at the end of the day really doesn't fucking matter. So to me, that's an epic fail as A, the tech guy, B, the Linux user, and C, the tech support person for that person that you as the techie are supposed to be. Because let's be honest, no generic end user, the people that tech support people hate, that are always the problem is between the keyboard and the chair type, or keyboard and the chair and the screen, or whatever. Those are the people at the end of the day don't give a shit. They're not going to look to reinstall an OS. They're not going to look at alternative operating systems. That is such a minutia of the industry and of people in the world that do that. Because everything else is all word of mouth. It is all from people using applications and experiencing applications. So if people have access and those generic custom end users that are very just, I want my shit to work, they're not going to give a two-bit flying shit about the OS. Give them their apps, give them what they need to get their work done, and they're not going to fucking care. So yet again, I find another video that is so dumb. So fucking dumb. Can I find one of these that it actually fucking matters? Anyway, maybe I'm right. Maybe I'm wrong. You guys know what the fuck to do. Rate it, subscribe. Peace out.